Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns. The NBA offseason is off to an explosive start, and for some very odd reason, the Phoenix Suns ended up in the middle of it on Tuesday night as the Houston Rockets blatantly tried to steal away Kevin Durant. What on earth is going on here? Is there any reality to it at all? I'll let you know. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Brendon Kleen, your host, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, and the host of the Just Basketball Show. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off what allegedly was draft day. We'll have some draft thoughts at the end. Welcome in. Appreciate you making Locked On Suns your first listen. We're free and available every day, including this summer or this weekend. We'll have multiple bonus episodes for you as well. Hit follow, hit subscribe if you have not already. Make Locked On Suns your first listen every day, and get locked onto the Suns every day. We have a lot to get to, of course. And there's a media angle, there is a tampering angle, there is a OG, bubble Suns angle here. There's a lot to get to. Today's episode brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports aren't quite what we want them to be, but this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, let me briefly try to recap here what exactly all has gone down on Tuesday night. So everything kicked off around 7 o'clock Arizona time, Tuesday night, when the Brooklyn Nets traded for Mikal Bridges. Now, that's your first Suns angle, right? Mikal, of course, the key piece that went to Brooklyn in the Durant trade. So, great. At first, you're like, okay, cool. Mikal is moving teams. Hasn't been a Sun in 2 years. Whatever. Interesting to see how that will go. Not our problem. Then, a second deal comes into place, which is basically a deal similar to kind of what the Nuggets did last year, version of what the Suns did after the Beal trade when they split their swap up, similar to what Dallas did at the deadline to reacquire a pick from Oklahoma City in order to make the Daniel Gafford or the PJ Washington trade. Actually, the Heat even did this back in 2020 when they wanted to try to get Gallinari and Iguodala, if you remember. They got Iguodala. They wanted Gallinari. And Brooklyn basically got back its 2025 and 2026 picks, ownership of those two, because now they don't have Bridges. They're going to be bad. They want to have ownership over their own picks. Feels like they could be headed toward a blow-up. And they gave up further out picks to Houston. Now, those further out picks are Suns picks. 2027, 2025, and then a swap in 2029 is what it sounds like. So great. Houston is trying to get some future assets that might have a little more value. Brooklyn is rebuilding. The Knicks are going all in. Fun little night in the NBA. Awesome. Few Suns ties, whatever. Then Woj, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN, out of nowhere, tweets, quote, "The implications of the Rockets landing the Suns picks, ? Houston wants to trade for Kevin Durant, and that becomes far easier if they can return the Suns picks that they gave up in the Durant deal to the Nets. The Suns have said they're keeping Durant for now, but that could change next season. But now, Houston has the picks to make the Suns whole again." Then, 4 minutes later, another tweet from Woj, quote, "As intrigued as the Rockets have been about Durant, they're determined to use the Suns picks to be aggressive on deals elsewhere now. Sources tell ESPN, Phoenix has made it clear that they want to run it back with this group, and Houston is seeking a major upgrade now." Then, About a half hour after that, out of basically nowhere, another Woj tweet. Quote, the Rockets possess a pick swap with the Suns in 2025, the Suns pick in 2027, and could end up with the Suns pick in 2029. If the Suns are ever faced with breaking up the team, Houston's also in prime position to pursue a younger Devin Booker. For now, Phoenix is trying to win. What the hell is going on here? We had heard in a mock draft, I believe on Monday, from Jonathan Givony, or maybe even over the weekend or last week, KD had been listed in a blurb about the Rockets, who are known to be very aggressive, right? They went all in to get Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks with their free agency money last year. They wanted to get Brook Lopez, didn't get him. Now they get the number 3 pick, which is actually, again, the ties between all these teams. Now, that number 3 pick that Houston has Wednesday night, that they might take Klingon with or whatever they do, that's Brooklyn's pick. So they have that. They have salaries. They have young players. They want to get better again. They want to take another step forward. They have a win now coach. They have pressure from ownership, on and on and on. That was the context in which Durant's name was brought up by Givony in that mock draft. It was in a list that included guys like Jimmy Butler, etc. So, thought nothing of it. Now, Woj goes out of his way to basically home in on Durant as Houston's target. And now, I will be a little bit reserved with my thoughts on the media side of this and the insider nature of all of it. Suffice to say, at the bottom line, this type of reporting that is done on Twitter, that is done on social media, that lacks context, does not help anybody. I don't feel any closer to understanding what Houston wants to do, nor whether it's reasonable. Even if I take my son's hat off, my son's lens off, and I just look at it as an NBA fan, throwing the Suns into all of this without concrete evidence that the two teams are discussing trades or anything feels just like reckless speculation to me. Just the simple fact, we weren't saying that Brooklyn was going to trade for Booker because they had the Suns picks before tonight. They still have some of them. Washington has some of the Suns pick swaps out there into the future. Are the Wizards going to trade for Kevin Durant or Devin Booker? No, they're not. Nobody thinks that. Nobody really thinks that the Rockets are going to. So, of course, when it comes to Durant, it's become a little bit of a game among media to play, like the game on like menus at restaurants for kids or in coloring books where it would be like word association. It would be like blue and sky, and then you draw a line and connect them. For NBA insiders, for NBA content creators, it is basically Kevin Durant is all of just his name 10 times down one side of that. And then on the other side, it's just every team in the NBA, and you just draw lines. And that's how it is. I get it. He's moved teams a few times now. But this crosses a line. It makes no sense. Primarily because if the whole idea here from the Durant side, let alone whatever the heck is like, let me just say the Booker part actually first. Devin Booker is not leaving the Suns, or let me say this. Devin Booker's not leaving the Suns anytime soon. Woj's tweet says as much. Ever faced with breaking up the team, at whatever time that might come. Well, one of the Suns picks that the Rockets just got is next year. Why would the Suns trade Devin Booker within the next year? They're so far from that. And if they were to trade him in 2 years or something, then like everything will be different. It's so out there. As for Durant, it's somewhat similar. And I'll talk more in the next segment about why it's unreasonable. But the baseline is, if the whole idea is that let's just get to this in the next segment. There are timing reasons, there are cap reasons, and there are NBA cultural reasons why Durant is not going to Houston now that we've gotten Booker out of the way, and we'll go over those coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors knows that. They have you covered, everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether that's a supercharger, a roof rack, an exhaust kit, an LED headlight, or whatever. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Okay. Little bit of a recap and the media gripes out of the way. Let's just nip this in the bud even further, okay? So, as it relates to Kevin Durant, there are two primary reasons why this is unrealistic and unreasonable and should not really even be out there as a news item. Okay? The first one, stemming from the timing of the picks that I was getting to in that last segment, is this. The idea, as it is being posited, and very, I don't want to pretend as if Woj is making things up here. It's more the lack of detail, the lack of critical thinking. If anyone would believe this, you don't have critical thinking skills, okay? The idea would be that now Houston has the Suns picks. The reason that matters is because it in theory, now that the Suns would have their own picks back, very similar to what Brooklyn just did, it allows you to shed talent and sort of consider a rebuild, because now you at least have ownership over your own picks. So if you are so bad, as the Nets are about to be, they already kind of were, well, now you get to make your own selection in relationship to how bad you were. You get to keep your own pick. Trading Kevin Durant in and of itself, just him, which is not something we've ever heard the Suns are considering this whole summer, would not make the Suns bad enough to care about having their picks. Especially if we're being just like playing that out and at least just like giving a little bit of time to that line of thinking, just long enough to explain why it's ridiculous. The Suns, 2029 is one of the picks that Houston just acquired here. At least a part of it, because it's been swapped a few times. Kevin Durant in 2029 will be over 40 years old. I don't know what team he'll be on. That goes out further than his current contract does, and not many players in the history of the NBA have played into their early 40s. Explain to me why that matters for this situation. Okay, so that's the main thing why that does not make any sense. Let's also talk, though, just to address it, and I promise I will close with draft talk. I was prepping a whole episode around the draft, and then these tweets started hitting, and I got mad and wanted to do, of course, I'm going to do the episode on this. But the Rockets don't have the deal. All right? They don't have a package that makes sense for this. Because again, just trading Durant still leaves the Suns with, I'm not trying to make it out as if losing Durant would not be catastrophic for the Suns, but we're having two separate conversations. Just trading Durant does not make the Suns bad enough to fully be that would not signal them fully going into a rebuild. They would have to make multiple moves beyond that. They have Bradley Beal on their team. They have Devin Booker on their team. Those are major pieces you would have to move before you would ever get to the point where you're talking about a lottery pick. Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, whatever you get back for Durant, Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, that team's not winning a championship, but that team's not getting the first overall pick here. So some sort of package based around picks doesn't even make sense for Durant now, forgetting if they're the Suns' picks or anybody else's picks. Getting rid of KD, the goal, as far as I can understand it now, would be to get pieces back who could help you continue to win. And it would only happen if Durant wanted it to happen. I should have said this all sooner. I mentioned there's no indication that the Suns want to trade Durant. That's first and foremost. But why would he want to go to the Rockets? The Rockets, who didn't make the play-in last year, who are very young, have no current or former All-Stars on their team. That's not a winning situation. He has no ties to that organization. The one case that I'm sure Rockets fans would cling to if they're trying to, will this into existence would be the relationship with Ime Udoka, who, of course, was an assistant coach on the Brooklyn Nets staff during KD's time there. And I'm not trying to minimize that. That probably would help. But knowing the coach doesn't mean you're going to... that doesn't mean anything. Okay? Kyrie Irving plays for the Mavs. We know KD and Kyrie are close. Is he going to ask for a trade to the Mavs? Would we take that seriously? Probably not. So why would we take this seriously, right? Okay, so there's that. That's the cultural reason that I was referencing. Teams don't trade their superstar legendary players to places that they don't want to be, and teams that haven't gotten a sign-off from a superstar legendary player don't just trade for them and cross their fingers. So, unless there is a lot of context here and something is going on with Durant and the Suns, or Durant has signaled to Houston that he would like to be there, there's no fire. There's barely any smoke. There's no fire. So there we go. And again, if any of that's true, that's context that the person breaking the story, i.e. Woj, should be telling us. And until he does, it all feels very much like speculation, and it all feels very irresponsible. But let me get back to the point of what the trade could look like. The Rockets, again, the main appeal of a deal would be picks. They now have all these Suns picks. They have they still have some of the Nets picks, I believe. I'm sure they have some other ones out there, their own in the future and things like that. Yeah, let me see here. They have a 2026 Houston OKC pick and all of their own picks and a couple Nets picks left over. So there you go. That would be the main appeal. But again, as far as we know, until the Suns are really blowing this entire thing up, which is very far from where we are right now, given Matt Ishbia has sounded like a lunatic talking about how much he still wanted to win and everybody wants their situation and they're still happy, that doesn't sound like a guy who's going to trade all of his 3 stars out of nowhere. So the Suns, if they ever were to consider trading KD and anything about this situation moved closer to that direction, the Rockets would be in a situation to match Kevin Durant's salary, which is $51.1 million this upcoming season. They don't want to trade Van Vliet. He's one of their veteran players. Maybe they do. Okay, if they wanted to trade Van Vliet, then I would take a lot of what I'm saying back. You could do Van Vliet and Jock Landale, or Van Vliet and Jayshawn Tate, and you're getting there, as far as just the salary pieces are concerned. If you're not trading Van Vliet, you're talking about Dylan Brooks. I mean, okay, not, I guess you don't say no to that. They're not trading Şengün. So is it Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, and a bunch of picks? I mean, okay. It's sure, but That offer, that package is only something you could talk yourself into if Durant signaled he was only going to go to the Houston Rockets. But as a reminder, where we are right now is that Kevin Durant has not even appeared to communicate with the Suns that he is unhappy in any way, shape, or form, that he wants out at all. And there's nothing telling us he would ever want to go to Houston. And yet, there is now an entire news cycle based around the idea. So either somebody along the way, right now it's Woj, he's the only one putting this out there, is either being incredibly reckless or knows something and isn't saying it. That's the only possible truth here. Outside of that, most of the other angles around this do not make a lot of sense and therefore should not really be part of the news, part of how the Rockets are being reported on, part of how the draft is being looked at number 3. The Rockets' wildest dreams or whatever is written on their whiteboard somewhere deep inside the training facility, that's not national news. That's not important. It's just a figment of their imagination right now. And somehow, the biggest insider in the sport went public with it. 2024, I suppose. I don't really know. All right, let's close out with some draft talk. Last-minute homework on the draft. A prospect that appears to be very much in play for the Phoenix Suns, who I have not talked about at all with much at all. I talked a little bit about it with Zach Cohen on Tuesday's episode, is Ryan Dunn of Virginia. I watched some clips of Dunn. I watched other people's scouting reports and breakdowns of Dunn. I read some background about Dunn, and I have some thoughts on what could very likely be one of the Suns' draft picks. I'll also give you my final sort of predictions about where the Suns will even be picking and kind of what might happen here on draft night coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. We love sports so much, of course, as diehards like I'm sure you and I both are. But during the summertime, it gets a little quiet. FanDuel, though, wants to help keep the sports going whenever you want. All you got to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's going even further. They're hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. I told you before, I've been filling that sports void with soccer. The U.S. is playing in Copa America on Thursday. They're favored by a lot, but anytime goal scorer, Pulisic, Balogun, maybe you like Pepe, you're getting like plus 200 odds or better on all those guys because soccer's kind of crazy. Guys might not score, but for that team, the same guys tend to score. It's worth a look. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, let's close out the show. Put the Durant-Houston craziness behind us here. Talk a little bit about the draft, which is the main thing going on Wednesday. And between some local reporters, some national buzz, Ryan Dunn, and what we know the Suns have worked out Ryan Dunn, he appears to be a very real candidate for the Phoenix Suns at pick 22, or even if they trade back, of course. The Ringer has him at 25 on their board. And let me see where he is on ESPN's board. 28. And even a lot of sort of the, people that I follow on Twitter who analyze the draft and maybe have a little bit more of a freewheeling mentality to just kind of let their takes fly with the draft tend to have Dunn at least as a first-round candidate, a first-round prospect, right? NFL people would say a day one guy, right? In this case, the NBA now has that. Day one, day two. So most people have Dunn as a day one guy. So if everybody likes him, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've found some magic thing and now I hate him. He is widely considered to be not only the best defensive overall prospect in this draft, but overall. Ever in the NBA draft. One of the best defensive prospects ever to come through. He is 21 already after 2 years in college, so even a little bit old for a sophomore. Turning 22 during next season, so he would have been 23 as a senior, And 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan. That's big. And 214 is what he's listed at. Yes, that's what he measured at the combine. He was listed at 208 in college. I don't know. He's a big 6'8", 208. Let's just say that. He can space incredibly. There were plays, if you watch some of the turnover creation or even just contest moments that he had. You're talking about a guy who could guard something on the perimeter if he was defending the screener or the ball handler, and then rotate over to, in the same play, protect the rim, or fly over to fill a passing lane, or dig in on a drive and get a hand in somebody's cookie jar and poke it loose and disrupt that ball handler away from whatever his actual responsibility is in the play. Just the instincts, the athleticism, the physicality, the force, the length, the epitome of what you would want in a defensive player in any era, but particularly in an era like this where the floor is really, really spaced and the ball is whipping around and the offense is just really sophisticated and smart. That's the pluses. The minuses are almost everything about his offensive game so far. Now, I would say he seems to have good instincts on the offensive end. I always say there's something to be said about guys who have been off-ball players who can't shoot their whole lives. It's not like you and I might be watching and thinking about Ryan Dunn for the first time. Ryan Dunn lives Ryan Dunn. So, of course, this might sound, convoluted what I'm trying to say here, but guys know their strengths and weaknesses, and he operates like a player who does not try to do too much. He kind of tends to keep the ball moving. He's at least not going to be a mess if he becomes involved in an offensive set. He has the size where, he finished at a really high level in college, and, he's not going to be taken advantage of by defenses as long as he doesn't shoot himself in the foot. But probably the most worrying thing, one, the three-point shot, just to reiterate, he only took 51 in 1,300 minutes at Virginia. So that should speak to, if he's just not even comfortable with it, then that's pretty ugly. The free throw shooting is 53% across 2 years. That's ugly. He has this weird thing where he made a decent amount of his 2-point jump shots, and there's these weird moments where you'll see him kind of hit these bunnies or floaters or little, short jumpers, and you're like, well, he seems to have touch. But if he's not trusting his own shot, why would I? Why would anyone? And Sam Vecini of The Athletic noted in his scouting report that Dunn has this odd thing where, had this odd thing, I should say, where this past season, down the stretch of the year, he just stopped shooting. And obviously the numbers kind of back that up. He took, during the beginning of the year, he had an 11 field goal attempt game, 14. He had a couple back-to-back in January where he took 10 shots. And then from the end of January on, he had a game where he took 1 shot in 27 minutes, a game where he took 0 in 20 minutes, 2 in 22 minutes, 2 in 24 minutes, and only cracked double digits in field goal attempts 1 time, which was March 15th from January 31st on, which was 12, 13 games. That's scary. All in all, it's funny. Dunn feels like maybe not quite the offensive feel as kind of a screener and a ball mover as as the player I'm about to say. But in a lot of other ways, including the fact that he's left-handed and like a big wing, he's kind of Toumani Camara. He's like a better defensive, worse offensive Toumani Camara. And it's funny. I mean, it's not funny. It makes obvious sense that the Suns would like him right after they picked Camara. But funny from the standpoint of we weren't sure Camara would break into the rotation. That was a deep second round player. You know, I guess like Dunn is significantly better on the defensive end enough to earn that higher evaluation, but it is also a worse draft. I bring all that up just to say that I would feel fairly similarly about Dunn in terms of his ability to step into a rotation right away as I did about Camara, which is that if he can't make a three, if he can't make jumpers, then I'm waiting to see what he can do on offense in order to stay on the court. And that's especially true early on in his career. Sam Vecini of The Athletic, who I mentioned a minute ago, compared Dunn to a fellow former Sun, Derrick Jones Jr., who bounced around quite a bit in the NBA, had some success in Miami and different spots, but then eventually, really broke out this year with Dallas, where he made enough threes and fit into a system where the team was playing fast and he became a good lob threat and a cutter and, at least can not be a mess with the ball in his hands, and feels like he may get paid and finally catch on with the team in the Mavs. That if it's Derrick Jones Jr. career trajectory, Dunn is not somebody that's going to contribute for the Suns right away. Now, I've been talking about that a lot with guests who have come on, Brandon Duenas on Monday, Zach Cohen on Tuesday, and just ask them, like, do you think that this pick needs to be somebody that can at least be a part of a rotation, even if it's deep, and even if they don't play in the playoffs maybe? Should that be a priority for the Suns this year? And people can have different opinions on that. I tend to think that it should be somebody that you think could at least play a little bit. I don't think Dunn can. I just don't. I think the offense is going to be too much of a problem early on that you're not going to be able to trust him in a winning environment as a rookie, despite his age. So to finish all of this crazy episode off, I think the Suns are going to look long and hard at trading back. Those deals are hard to find. You usually get about one of them per draft, maybe two. A lot of teams want to trade back this year because it's an eye of the beholder, role player, older player draft, and so trading back is what you do in that type of a situation. The Suns are going to be one of many teams trying to do that. And Dunn still makes more sense to me later in the first round or even early in the second based on where analysts have him on their big boards and where he's getting mocked in terms of how teams value him. I still come back to that Yves Missi feels like the only player that we know the Suns could be interested in who fits what they need, who actually feels like good value at 22. Whether it's Tyler Kolek or it's Ryan Dunn or it's a number of other players, Bronny James, of course, it doesn't feel like those guys are number 22 players. That doesn't mean they won't get picked at 22 anyway. If the Suns can't make a trade and they want to just take the player they like the best, I would get it. It can't always be perfect. But I don't have a great gauge of what's going to happen because of all of that. So the Suns are for sure going home on Wednesday night with a drafted player. I continue to believe that. Maybe more than one. But who it is and where it is, I truly don't know. That's fun, though. Enjoy it. I'll be back after the draft with Stephen Perjone Garner to recap all the shenanigans in Sunsland and anything that affects Sunsland. So hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. Get that episode in your feed Wednesday night. We'll have a second round recap Thursday night, an extra episode leading into free agency. Then I'll be with Brandon on Sunday night when free agency actually gets started. So tons of Locked On Suns content headed your way. Hit that button so you don't miss it. Enjoy the draft. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.